Welcome to the Creative Community Podcast. I'm David.
And I'm Mark. And we are building a community of creatives who work together to achieve creative excellence. If you're an avid listener of the podcast, you might have noticed that the name has changed.
That's right. We're changing the name of the podcast itself. The Creative Community Podcast presented by Destination Arete. Destination Arete is still our brand, obviously, as you can see, but we want the podcast to be focusing especially on you, the listener, the community that we're building, and on our guests that we interview, and just things, the podcast, we want it to be about things that are beneficial for artists and creators and the community that we've built. So we wanted to let you guys know that right off the bat here in 2021. We can't let a year go by without changing something of our branding or something like that, but we really wanted to focus because we want Destination Arete to encompass many things in the future, Lord willing. So we wanted to get really specific with the podcast and let people know it's about community, it's about coming together, it's about what we can learn from one another.
Yeah, and I think what you said about allowing it to encompass many things is right on, because you can think of other podcast brands where it's such and such podcast presented by, this overarching brand. And I really think that is what we are wanting to do this year, is open up that space and make room for that future growth. So it's not only about changing for improvement or for just clarification, but it's also about kind of opening up an opportunity for future growth, which I think I'm super excited about. We not only have that, but this year we are going to, speaking of the Creative Community Podcast, this year we are going to try to interview just as many creators as we did last year. So we'll have every other week, we'll bring you an interview with a creative person, a professional in their field, and we'll be asking them questions about community, about their experience, about how they got where they are. And I'm super excited. Those conversations last year really helped me to grow, and I feel like really even just grew my own personal community. So I'm excited to do that and continue to provide that for our listeners.
Yeah, I can just think immediately of things I learned from our guests in the past year. And so I'm excited to have more guests. I'm excited to have people we had on last year back again. Yeah. We've already been talking with several people about bringing them back on for another episode and kind of making them hopefully like our resident experts in that area. We can bring them on whenever there's a new thing in the industry or a new movie or a new technique or something like that. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
If our listeners have people they'd love for us to interview, we want to know. So, send us a message or send us an email. And we're also going to be asking our guests who we should interview next. I think that's going to be a really helpful thing to just kind of start to build our community from them. They'll know people and they can recommend. I'm excited about all of that. Another goal we have on the community side is to we want to go live on Instagram every other Thursday. So on the Thursdays that a podcast is not going to release, we release every other Friday. The Thursday after that will be on around 8 p.m. Eastern time, or that time may change. We'll let you guys know. But we want to talk to you guys, the listeners. We want to see what you're working on, and then we kind of want to share things that we're learning in our creative journey, or hear from you the things you're learning. And I'm looking forward to that, just getting to know. A lot of you guys are in the comments faithfully, or you send us direct messages, or you talk to us on Facebook, or even in person. You let us know you're enjoying the podcast, but we want to just connect with you more frequently and stay in touch and find out what's going on with you and what we can do to serve you better.
Yeah, and I think that's going to create a great feedback loop, because this year, really, we are upping our game in that there will be community-based content every week. So, like you're saying, the week that the podcast doesn't come out, we'll have an interactive segment, and that I think will create a great feedback loop that will, the interactions will inform the interviews will inform the interactions, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing that. It reminds me of an old Pixar quote. They said, at Pixar, art influences technology, and the technology influences the art, and I think that's what we're going to try to do here is, the interactions will inform the interviews will inform the interactions. So I'm really excited about that heading into 2021. And that kind of brings us to our third goal, which is to make more content. If you don't already know, in 2020, we made a webcomic, and that was super exciting. Launch can be found at destinationarete.com underneath the tab, /launch. Sorry, yeah, destinationarete.com /launch. If you just go to the website, there's a tab for it. I think it's called webcomic, so you can go and see it there. But yeah, destinationarete.com /launch is a great place to find that webcomic, and we will finally post the last 2 panels of that webcomic Patrick Farley was a huge help with it. I had an awesome time collaborating with him on the project, and we are going to kind of shift gears away from launch for now. David and I are going to be kind of looking at some new things that we can be doing to be creative, to create stories together. We'll talk a little bit about that more as this kind of 2021 episode goes along. This announcement episode will give you more information about that. But I did want to take a minute and just thank Patrick for everything that he has done on this project. We look forward to working with him on future projects. So again, destinationarte.com/launch, the final picture of launch, those final 2 panels kind of wrapping up that project will be up there. And again, we look forward to working with Patrick in the future.
Yeah, we've already kicked some ideas back and forth with Patrick, and I'm really excited about what those hold. And once again, thank you to him. He did a great job. The final panel of launch that you can see on the website was kind of his. I can't remember if he designed it and you colored it or how that worked, but
yeah, he did a great job. I guess it's the environment design, the set dressing. He really took it up a notch, which was exciting to see, and it really has sparked in me like a desire to make our future stories even more grounded than launch was, and just the seeing how his abilities have grown and my abilities have grown and David's abilities have grown over the course of making it is really like just this, kind of mind-blown moment where it's like, oh, we could make some really cool stuff. And so as much as we learned on that, I'm excited about learning more in the future.
Yeah, and even though launch is done, we still want to tell stories. And I think that's what Mark and I kind of decided. I've been doing a lot of writing in the last 6 months, and you and I talked, and we said when we started Destination Arte, we wanted to be storytellers. Like, if you go back and listen to the first year of the podcast, we talk about the stories that influenced us.
We even write stories together.
We even write stories on the podcast. Just such a dumb idea. Why we did that, I don't know. It's just lots of long, awkward pauses. Yeah. But we want to still pursue that goal, and we want to pursue the goal of connecting with artists like our listeners and telling stories together with them. So that being said, we want it to be profitable, worthwhile, and enjoyable and meaningful for those who participate. So Mark, some things we learned on launch, just kind of list those off.
Yeah, and these are things that I think we've started to learn, and that as we continue to go on, we'll learn more about. So I don't want, when I say these things, I don't want to say like, well, yeah, mastered that, so we'll just be moving on to harder lessons now, because these are kind of probably the lessons we'll be learning our entire careers, I assume. But one thing we did start to learn was how much time it takes to make something. It was really cool. We actually got to track our hours on the first. Through no fault of our own, by accident, we tracked our hours on the first chapter that we made of launch, and it was really helpful to be able to sit down and game plan and be like, okay, this is to what quality we made blank, and now we know, okay, if we want to make something of equal quality, it's going to take the two of us this amount of time. So that was really cool. I think that was been a huge help to us moving forward. So we learned how much time it takes to make something.
And the second thing we learned is how to communicate with others when working on a group project. And Patrick was great about it. He would, he would communicate, and we tried I think we tried like Trello, and we tried Google Drive, and we just had different things. And I learned how to communicate with you, and in writing the story and encouraging you guys to finish things, and and we kind of figured out a game plan. And so I think we have a lot to learn in that area, but this was a great trial run, and Patrick was so patient with us, and you were patient with me, and I tried to be patient with you. I don't know if I did a good job.
No, you did a great job, and I think one of the biggest things is, as far as communication goes, is we were able to bring on our sister Amy, and Amy is someone who we've been wanting to work with for a long time. I've pitched multiple ideas to her and tried to bring her on as producer, and then never followed up, which is on me. And so finally, I think this year, with David's help, with the communication that he brought, we were able to bring her on, and she's going to be a huge asset to us, I think, moving forward, both with communication and with telling stories. So I'm really excited about that. I think that was one thing that we both learned and were finally able to implement, was like, okay, we need this person, and we finally had the reason and the skills to bring her on. So that was super exciting. Not only did we learn how to communicate with others on a group project, but we also, Patrick and I got some great experience learning how to lay out a storyboard and panels. Patrick is now diving deeper into comics, which I'm super excited about for him. And I think just seeing his paneling layout ability grow has been really cool. I learned a lot about communicating with him visually. So like when I talk about layouts and panels, there's a lot of stuff that has to happen even before that. I have to, if I have an idea in my head about how the layout's going to look, I have to sketch out what the castle yard is going to look like. I have to sketch out the obstacle course, those sort of things, so that then we can kind of take a virtual camera into those environments and place shots and panels around. And that's something that I really was not prepared for when I started the story. But I definitely learned like, oh, okay, this is how, not only do I need to be communicating verbally with him, but these are the ways that I need to be able to communicate visually with him in these storyboards and layouts.
Yeah, I didn't learn any of that, but I could see as launch went along that it went from just like a side scrolling type, like a side scroller type video game to, oh, we're over top, we're underneath, we're beside, we're behind, And so I could really appreciate what you mean by moving that camera around. And yeah, I thought you guys did a great job. And I will say the last thing we learned is how much fun it was to work together.
Yeah.
I mean, it maybe not have been fun in the actual, like, the putting of the pen to the paper. Yeah. It was very hard, but when we looked back at it and we have this finished product, and whenever we read through sometimes I read through the webcomic just for fun. Yeah. It's so enjoyable to like, wow, we all got together and did this, and I did this much work and you guys did this much work in comparison, but I'm hoping that we can just continue that idea of having fun telling stories together as we move forward. And we are working on implementing just like a business plan that will allow us to continue to make more content. And hopefully with you guys involved, it's going to be us starting out, and then we're going to start bringing people in and start connecting with people that we want to work with and connecting with you who we want to work with. And I'm excited for the future of Destination Arte. Like we said, we named the podcast specifically now. It was great the first couple years because we got to get our brand out there. People know that if they follow Destination Arte, they know who we are, but now they'll know that it's the Creative Community Podcast, and then we can start doing the storytelling of Destination Arte, or we can find another avenue of content.
Right, and hopefully that, like David said, that first part of the podcast is a prologue to the story that we want to write with our careers in Arte. It's that foundation, that thing where you're like, it's nice to have the backstory of these characters, and now I know their motivations going forward and what has shaped them. But if someone was just to jump into the podcast now, listening to these interviews, they would just be benefited and enjoy it and not have to have that foundation. But for those of you that have been with us the whole time, we really appreciate it. And we really think that it's going to be special to for all of us to go through and watch and listen. And we learned a lot about ourselves, and we kind of got to explore a lot of ideas with those early days of the podcast. So we're just going to keep getting closer to that peak of the mountain. The road's going to get kind of narrower and narrower, hopefully. So that's something that I'm really excited about. I'm also really excited about, like David mentioned, that business part of the plan, because that's something that I really want to get better at, and I want to jump into, because I think that getting into that business side is going to free us up to make more stories. It's like my friend was talking about his budget. He said, when I first made a budget, I thought, man, this is going to be so restrictive. And what in reality it did was give him the permission to spend the money. It did not give him the restriction that he couldn't spend the money. It told him how much money he could spend. So I think that's what's going to do for us, is we're going to know, okay, this is what we have to do to meet this deadline, to make this, this goal. And then that will give us the permission then to, in good conscience, create fun stories, collaborative stories that I think everyone can enjoy. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, because not only Patrick, we've got other people that keep saying, hey, I'd love to do something with you. Yeah. And we just want to avoid, and this didn't happen with anybody yet with Arte, thankfully, praise the Lord. We just want to avoid either getting into a project and then it never getting done because we can't pay you anything, so we can't push you, or getting into a project and someone's feelings getting hurt because they don't feel like they're getting enough. Like, we want everybody to understand up front how much time we expect it to take, what we've budgeted for it, what, if we do a Kickstarter, or if we do a fundraiser, or if we do Patreon, however it looks like in the future, when people trust us to give us money to make stories, we want to be wise with that money and stewards of that money, and then also as generous as we can be to those working with us, and make it worthwhile for them to be involved. That's our heart, really, because I think that the more excellent we do every part of it, whether it's the business side or the creative side, the more excellent it will be in the long run.
Yeah, and that, like David said, you said the whole idea of, stewarding that money well to then, be generous with the audience, or be generous with the artists. I think that's also our heart for the artists, is stewarding their talents well to then be able to be generous with finances or with, exposure and portfolio building and those sort of things. So I think you're right on. And man, it is really exciting to be able to take kind of this next step into this journey. It's scary, it's nerve-wracking, it's like, oh my goodness,
just so everyone's clear, we clearly have no idea what that means. We're just saying that's our goal for 2021 is to figure that out. Right. So whether you see a story from 1,000 people all working together this year or not, that's just going to be our goal, to get to that point where we could say, okay, here's the next step.
Yeah. And so, again, we really appreciate your guys' support. We appreciate your guys' just patience, the close friends and family that have followed us along and been like, yeah, you got this, we're so excited, has been meant the world to us. So.
Yes, definitely. All right, as always, subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, Spreaker, or Google Play for more episodes like this one. And if you would, leave us a review or a comment. That really helps the algorithm know that you enjoyed us, and then tells it to share it with people like you.
Yeah. Connect with us on Facebook and Instagram, Destination Arete, ARETE, for podcast episodes, community info, and news about upcoming story projects. So the Instagram is no longer just going to be about just the podcast. We're going to have other news in there that I just mentioned. So follow us on there so that you can keep up to date where new stories are coming out, new guests that we're going to have on, those sort of things, and new community interaction. So we'll be back in 2 weeks with our first interview of 2021, which we are super stoked about. Can't wait for you guys to listen to it. So see you then.